press club environment, but an important election in 4 weeks. 4 weeks in 1 day, and we only do this once every 4 years. And the incumbent, Sharon Weston Broome, who won with 52% of the votes 4 years ago, is here, along with her 5 challengers. And as they move along for opening statements, I'll say a little about each candidate, and then we'll let the candidate come to the podium. And we'll start in alphabetical order, and as we move along, Steve Carter will be starting the 2nd round, Eric Gayrard 3rd round, Denise Marcel 4th, Jordan Piazza 5th, and Pat Watson 6th. But Sharon Weston Broome is a former Metro Councilwoman, former state senator, former state representative. She was Speaker Pro Tem and Senate President Pro Tem after her career in the legislature. She has spent many years in this community, arriving here as a journalist many years ago, and she was elected mayor 4 years ago in a close race over Bodie White. She is a Democrat, born in 1956, and without further ado, Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome. And you have 1 minute.
So I'll give y'all 30 seconds.
Well, thank you so much to the Press Club for the opportunity to be here today. Now, this afternoon, you're going to hear a lot from individuals who desire to be mayor president. And I will tell you, I'm delighted to have had the privilege over the past 4 years to serve as your mayor president. And I want to share with you why I'm running for a 2nd term. I'm running for a 2nd term because I believe that what we have done in the past 4 years is transformational, and we have adhered to transparency. As you recall, in 2017, right after 2016, we were a community in trauma. And so I hit the ground running, addressing issues like police reform, like the Great Flood of 2016, and our water management issues. So the things that we did in 2017 were transformational. But in addition to that, we have elevated transparency in city parish government. So you can see and identify what your dollars are doing for this city, including our Move BR. More to come. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And next up is Steve Carter. He was a star athlete at LSU, tennis player, tennis coach, and later an administrator, associate athletic director at his alma mater. He's a lifelong Baton Rougean, born in 1943, served 12 years in the Louisiana House. He won his first race by 87 votes, and last year he ran for the Senate and he lost by 4 votes. Steve Carter, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank all of y'all for being here today. Thank the Press Club. I'm not sure where you buy your clothes, but I want to know, because I'm going to be like that to buy a suit, sport clothes just like that. As Jim said, I'm Steve Carter, lifelong resident of Baton Rouge. Got involved with LSU, as Jim said, but the main thing is that once I left LSU, I went to the Air Force for 5 years. Thoroughly enjoyed the Air Force. Came back, was in the LSU Athletic Department. The main reason I decided to run for mayor is I have 4 grandchildren, and I'm very concerned about the direction that our city is going. I certainly don't want my youngest grandchildren to end up like some of the children have here in Baton Rouge, murdered in our driveway. We need to solve that problem. We need to solve drainage problems. We need to solve unemployment problems. And we have an awful lot of problems that we need to resolve. I feel like I'm the best candidate for the job because I'm willing to take the chances. I want bold, courageous reform. We've been doing it the same way for a long time, and I think it's time for a change. So thank y'all very much for allowing me to be here today.
And if I didn't mention it, Steve Carter is a Republican. The next candidate is Eric Gayrard. He is running as an independent. He ran for lieutenant governor 25 years ago on a platform of hire me to fire me, and this is his first election attempt since. He is a lawyer. Also in his career, he's been a stand-up comic, a rapper, an author. Born in 1958, graduate of the LSU Journalism School, Eric Gayrard.
Hi, glad to be here. I'm wearing this because I want to be the fitness mayor with an emphasis on health and fitness in our parish. I am a conservative libertarian personal injury lawyer. I am Also, I'm the only one of the candidates, as an independent, the only candidate that has established and run a 8-figure private sector corporation. And I have an innovative campaign: education, crime, traffic, fixing traffic, business development, and quality of life, community relations. And so I'm going to attack all those things, and we'll hear more about those later. You go to fusetherouge.org, fusetherouge.org, if you want to get some in-depth information about that. But the biggest beef I have today is what happened to me. I thank the press club for inviting me, but BRAC is a problem. I got word today that Mr. Piazza and I, Jordan, we're not going to be allowed to be in the televised debate because they say that we're not qualified with a 5% on the poll. So we're going to have more to say about that. So I think that's a problem. I think they're more of an entrenched special interest than we want to think. Thank you.
And the next candidate is C. Denise Marcel. She is a state representative, a longtime Metro Council person before that. She is a Democrat, born in 1960. She ran for this office 4 years ago, and lost to the incumbent Sharon Weston Broom. But she's giving it another shot, and she is here to tell her story. Representative Marcel.
Good afternoon. First of all, let me thank you all for hosting this forum. I am C. Denise Marcel. I'm currently the state rep and former council member, as he has stated. I've shown leadership in both roles. I know how to work on both sides of the aisle. And the reason that I'm running is because I'm sick and tired of crime in Baton Rouge. I'm sick and tired of the flooding in Baton Rouge. And I'm sick and tired of the infrastructure in North Baton Rouge not being addressed. We've seen many studies. The DBE program that we passed, I think in 2009, still have not been implemented. We're still studying, I guess. And so I'm tired of studying things. I'm tired of the planning. I'm tired of the ribbon cutting. And it's time to get down to business in Baton Rouge and make Baton Rouge a better place and a safer place for each one of us to live, work, and play. I'm C. Denise Marcel, number 90 on your ballot.
And our fifth candidate to speak is Jordan Piazza. He is a restaurant and lounge owner. He comes from a well-known family from that line of work. He's the youngest candidate in the race, born in 1988, and this is his first election in town.
Thanks, Jim. Folks, I mean, a pleasure to be here today. Thanks for having me, especially during COVID. As we've seen that with government shutdowns, it's tough to get in front of people, so it's important to be here. Thank you for having me. As Jim said, the youngest candidate, I think that's important. It's time for a new generation of leaders. For too long, for decades now, we've been electing politicians and get the same results. And until we stop electing these same officials, we can't expect different results. You know, we talk about crime on the rise. We've surpassed 100 homicides now. What we haven't talked about is the 200 non-fatal shootings in our parish. And what's important about that is that we need to stop giving money to residents and hoping that we fix this. We need to put more patrol officers on the street. We need to ensure that we give our police officers a raise who haven't gotten a raise in 13 years. But we need new leadership and new ideas. There's not transparency, and as E said earlier, BRAC has 10% of their annual budget is a city contract with the city parish. Two folks up here, the mayor being one and Matt being the other, have to approve that budget. And it's ironic those two are the four that got there. So I'm here because we need to get politicians out of government so we can make a real big difference and improve Baton Rouge, because we've seen an exodus of people for way too long. Thank you.
And number 6 in alphabetical order is Matt Watson, who's a Metro Councilman. He worked for a Metro Councilman before he was elected to his post. He was born in 1972. I don't know if I mentioned, for those who are unaware, C. Denise Marcel is a Democrat, Jordan Piazza is a Republican, and Matt is a Republican challenging Mayor President Broom. Matt Watson.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think it's the first time I've been before the press club. We've got a beautiful day to be outside, so let's be thankful for that. As Jim stated, I worked for the previous council person, and when I did that, we sort of reinvented the role of legislative aid to be more hands-on. I didn't spend a lot of time in City Hall in the office. Instead, I spent a whole lot of time in my district, going to people's houses that had problems, going out meeting with people who are going to serve the residents there to fix sinkholes, drainage problems, potholes, problems with the streets in front of their house. Something as simple as streetlights. But the thing is, I called a person, I answered the phone one time when a guy called to try to get some help, and he told me that me answering the phone was the best service he's ever gotten from this government ever. This was before the current mayor took over. But I'll tell you, we've got to get more involved, we've got to take care of more people, and we've got to get the job done. I'll tell you more later.
And now it's time for the questions, and I don't intend to ask every question, so we will take some from working media as well. But a year ago, almost a year ago, voters in this parish, and the portion that is St. George, the 86,000 residents of that particular part of the parish, voted 54 to 46% to incorporate their own city, and now that is tied up in litigation. The mayor has expressed her concern about what this will do to parish life as we know it and to parish government. For the other candidates and for the mayor, do you think this is the right course of action, and what will happen if St. George becomes a reality? Steve Carter, you're first.
Thank you, Jim. As you know, there's a democratic process, and St. George was told initially that they needed to form because their problem was they were concerned about the school system. They were told to form an independent school district. Then they were told they needed to get enough people who they surveyed to sign a petition to it so they were allowed to have a vote. They signed a petition and they voted. And they voted to separate and become the city of St. George. Then we have a lawsuit. Well, in my opinion, it's time to stop all of this. St. George did what they expected to do and were asked to do. We have a lawsuit. Every time we seem to have a problem, we always have turmoil within the city. I want to sit down with St. George because they're going to be part of the parish and talk to them about what the problems are and what we can do to solve the problems. Work together to unite not only Baton Rouge, but the entire parish. That's what needs to take place, so we ensure that we have a unified parish and all people want to work together and enjoy being in East Baton Rouge Parish.
I take the opposite approach. I'm against the St. George creation. I don't think 17,000 people should dictate what happens to 500,000 people. That vote was severely gerrymandered. It was done the second time, and it cut out swaths of folks that happened to be minority. And so they dictated how that vote was going to come out. So I think that's inherently wrong. Education is the reason it happened in the first place, and if we went with my program, which is fund it, don't run it, I want to create a situation where the government funds the education but doesn't pay for the education. And every child would get $8,000 as a credit stipend if you follow my plan. And so that would shortcut all the problems and the initial problems that St. George had with the creation of their own city. Plus, I would like to bring in St. George and show them that they can be part of the city. We can only go forward, I think, if we go forward as one city, and like Coach O likes to say, one heartbeat. Thank you.
Let me start out by saying that I did not believe that St. George should break away from East Baton Rouge Parish. I think that we're always better together. I don't believe that they should have been told to go and create their own city either. However, if I would have been on the council, I would have continued to make sure that the people annex themselves within the city of Baton Rouge because they were in unincorporated area. However, that did not take place. I think it was kind of backwards the way it happened. We waited until they formed their own city, and then we filed a suit. I think that was, in hindsight, should be backwards to some people. You should have done that on the front end and not the back end. And I would love to sit down with St. George and see what we could do to address all of their needs because I would be the mayor president of the East Baton Rouge Parish, and so I don't want to separate myself from them. We are one parish, and my mother lives there, so I cannot separate myself from St. George.
Yeah, as insinuated earlier, this is not the first time we've dealt with this, folks. And it goes back to electing these same folks. Central left, Zachary left, Baker left, and now we have another part. And if we had this transformative leadership that the mayor's talking she has, why would they want to leave? It's because we mismanage our budget. We have a failing education system that we have not addressed. Instead, we want to point fingers and say that they can't break office, they don't have a great plan. But let me tell you what, our plan is failing too. That's why this is the most challengers a mayor, president, incumbent has seen in over 30 years. It's not working. We must elect new leaders with new ideas, and I'm optimistic that St. George will come back to the table if they have belief in the leadership. But that's the problem, is that they don't have belief in leadership because they were met with a lawsuit. And no one in elected position should be suing their constituents. We hold value and we hold sacred our election process in the United States. And when we start questioning that, we're going down a slippery slope. Not to mention, it's not like the mayor's race last election was won by a landslide. It was under 10 points as well. So to talk about a vote that was under 10 points, we're talking apples to apples here. And so we got to work with these folks and we got to address these problems quickly. It's going to take new leadership though.
As what was mentioned earlier, the folks in St. George didn't create the rules of coming up with their own municipality. They had to go to the state. They had to follow the same rules that Central, Baker, and Zachary did. And they followed the number of signatures they needed to get on a petition. That number was satisfied. They got on a ballot. That election happened. They won the election to form their own city. The governor has already put in the transitional taxing district. He's already signed in the traditional taxing district for St. George to become a reality. What we have to do is not stick our head in the sand or try to sue our way out of the inevitable. What we need to do is sit down with the leadership of St. George and have real, forward-thinking, constructive, and very transparent conversations to formulate an equitable plan forward for everyone in the entire parish. We've got to work together because we've got to get this done. We've got to figure out a way to get on the other side of this together. St. George is not leaving the parish. We're all going to be in East Baton Rouge Parish together.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, Lake Charles went through a catastrophic experience with a hurricane. Lake Charles is a city almost the same size of the proposed city of St. George. I wonder what would have been the plan of action to address a crisis like took place in Lake Charles for the city of St. George, or the proposed city. Well, the truth of the matter is we don't know. You know why? Because they have not given us a plan. How are you going to stand up a city when you have an emergency like that? What about your taxes? Are your taxes going to go up? I met with the citizens of St. George in a very cordial manner twice at least. On the second time after the election, I asked for a plan. They didn't give me one. And responsible leadership dictates that all of us, whether you live in that area or not, should have a plan to build a city. Thank you.
It's time for the second round of questions, and I think Andrea Gallo from the Advocate has a question. So Andrea, would you step forward, please? And we'll start with Eric Gayrard on this round.
Should I come up there?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Thank you guys for all being here today. My question is about the coronavirus pandemic. We've seen a whirlwind of news about it at the federal level this week. At the same time, we're seeing the legislature take steps related to the governor's authority over emergency powers. And we have heard from Alex Bu that he believes the virus became politicized. My question for each of you is, who would you ask to advise you on the coronavirus pandemic if you become the next mayor or mayor going forward? Who would be the person whose advice you would lean on about how to manage this pandemic? Thank you.
Yeah, everyone needs to go to fusetherouge.org because it's a little unfair this particular format because you can't get enough input from any one candidate with this short a period of time. Who I would ask, I would say Alex Berenson. Who's Alex Berenson? He's a former New York Times reporter. He wrote a book. It's called Unreported Truths about COVID-19 and lockdown. He is a very detailed, analytical approach to that. And he is of the belief that it's been a huge over-response. We need to treat American citizens and citizens of all of our states like the free-thinking American citizens that we are, that can make common sense decisions. Obviously, it's a huge tragedy for the 200,000, if that's even an accurate number. But we got to keep it in perspective. 600,000 people a year die of cancer. 600,000 people die of heart disease. And we don't go crazy over those. So we need to take it in perspective. But we need to do the common sense approach things that we can do to help battle this epidemic. Thank you.
I mean, I think that's an easy question to answer. You need to lean on the experts in the healthcare industry, but you also have to take into consideration the business owners and the churches and everybody around you. I don't think there's one size fits all. And I think that it was something new to us, the pandemic. Nobody knew exactly what to expect or how to handle it. And so we had people taking advice maybe from one person or one industry and not the other. I think that I would have sat at the round table with everyone and come up with a plan how we could proceed to make sure that our most vulnerable population, of course, was taken care of, and certainly our citizens and then our businesses, and I think that we could accomplish that.
Easy answer. I would speak to President Trump and Mike Pence, and this is why. They speak to all the experts that it requires to get all the data that's needed to provide the American people with what they need to be prepared responsibly. Now, we know that this is definitely political. We know that this has caused a lot of challenges. As a small business owner, I've been personally affected. The mayor celebrated last week that she didn't have to furlough anyone during the pandemic. Well, I had to fire my entire staff. I had to close my business for weeks. And we're barely open. We're barely surviving. So as a small business owner, I know what it feels like. And that's the problem that what we have now in government statewide. So we have leaders that don't know how to run a business. They didn't think about the effects they would have after the close down, which is the state unemployment has now fell on $100 million. And if they don't get federal assistance, which is the democratic process waiting on the democratic relief rather, waiting on government bailout, we're going to have to increase our employer taxes to over 60%, which is unsustainable for businesses, so you'll see more shutdowns. We've also seen over 60% of African American businesses compared to 38 nationally in East Baton Rouge Parish that have had to close after coronavirus. So we need to reopen our economy, and we can do so safely while protecting our elderly and our vulnerable. Thank you.
Well, I would agree that you can't go to just one person, but I would start with Dr. Godby, the state's preeminent expert on coronavirus here. I would have him come out with me as mayor president and communicate directly to the community. Let a medical expert opinion drive what we do, and understand that we do have to balance that with concern for business, concern for having kids go to school. How are they going to attend school? We've got to leave it, unlike some of my other challenges up here that think that they can do something about education. We really have to leave that up to the EBR school board and Bessie on what's going to happen inside K through 12 education. But we need to have medical expertise driving what we do and balance that so we don't have another shutdown, but we cannot have the terrible things that have happened to our small business here in our town. So I'd lean on medical expertise, but I would certainly have the business community at the table as well.
Prior to the first shutdown that took place in our city and in our parish and in our state, I met with all of the area hospital professionals. We had a roundtable discussion about COVID-19 and the path and impact it was having on our city and parish, or would have. From that conversation, Dr. Katie O'Neill, who indeed is one of the premier specialists on infectious diseases, conferred with me on a consistent basis, as well as the other hospital providers. Now, what you need to know is the path forward that we took was one of looking out for the well-being of our citizens and also balancing the economy. That's why we had our Keep BR serving program for restaurants like yours, Mr. Piazza, that could access dollars, not only for the restaurant, but for the service. That's why we did our Restart BR program, where we're giving out grants to small businesses. So health and business does not have to be mutually exclusive. Dr. Katie O'Neill.
First of all, my heartfelt thoughts go out to all of the people who have contracted this horrible virus. But if I were in a position, I would contact every conceivable person that had knowledge about this on the state, local, and federal level. Talk to them, bring in the experts. But you have two problems with this. The first problem has to do with the safety of the community. The second problem has to do, it's not a one-size-fits-all with the businesses, the small businesses in the city. As an example, they shut all the bars down. Well, you take Oliver Twist as an adult bar, those people are going to probably be responsible. They're going to do the things that are necessary to protect the people. They're going to wear the mask, they're going to social distance. But you go out to Fred's, Lord knows what's going to happen. So you can't have one size fits all. But you bring the experts in, you talk to them, you put it together a plan that will ensure the safety, that's the main thing, of the citizens of this parish.
I think it's fairly apparent that we have great division in our country and our city, and we often hear about the two Baton Rouges, North of Baton Rouge, South Baton Rouge, and we, in the past, as a parish, have had measures before the Metro Council that involved so-called tolerance ordinance, tolerance resolution, neither of which passed. Have we reached the point where is the time to do this, or would this just sow further division? Denise Parcell, you're first. The tolerance ordinance, which I believe you actually sponsored last time, do you think it's time to renew a discussion about that?
Great question. Absolutely. I sponsored the ordinance because I believe in fairness and non-discrimination to everyone in this parish. I believe that what you do is your business and we should not be discriminating against you for that. Now, although it did not pass, many people lined up against it. I got no support from our current mayor with a letter of support or anything like that when she was in the Senate at the time. So yes, I pressed for it, got very little support for with my ordinance from anyone, and I think it's time that we revisit that and get people's real views on what it is that they believe, and not allowing them to assist people under the table or behind the doors. And let's come out front and say what you're really for and what you really believe in. And I really believe in fairness for everyone.
Yeah, I absolutely support it, and I believe that we do need equality throughout the parish, but we won't reach equality until we provide opportunity parish-wide. And until we fix our educational problem and really reinvest in the different parts of the parish, we're not going to see equal opportunity for all residents. And that's a problem that exists. We've got to build new bridges. And why do we do that? Because it brings not only new development, but it creates jobs. We've got to open our schools in demand. And while Watson said that the mayor doesn't have direct control of the school boards, I'm well aware, Matt, thank you. What I do know is that we don't need folks from Midland, Michigan, or other parts of the country coming down telling us how to live. We need to work on our school system, because we know in our parish we have two other cities, Central and Zachary, that have 2 of the top 10 in the state. So we can do better, but we must demand better. So the mayor-president can have a working relationship with the school board to ensure that we're demanding better. In doing this, parish-wide, we're going to enable opportunity, we're going to enable development, and we're going to combat crime. Because right now, when folks graduate, they either have to turn to a life of crime, or they have to move out of this parish, and that's what's happening. So if we're going to really advance with time, as I keep saying, generations, we've got to be open to new ideas and a new way of living, and that invites everyone to the table.
Last year, I put forth a non-binding resolution that started with the preamble that the East Baton Rouge Parish Metropolitan Council denies discrimination of any kind and finds it contrary to the United States Constitution, the Constitution of the State of Louisiana, and our plan of government. That resolution merely stated what protections people have already in our community, whether it be from the U.S. Constitution, the Civil Rights Act, all the way down. It created a quick Cliff Notes version of what, if you feel like you're being discriminated against in housing, who you go to, what the prescriptive period is to get remedy for employment, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important part of that resolution was to tell everybody about the, now in the past, but at the time in the future, cases before the United States Supreme Court, the Bostock and the Zarda cases, which were about sexual orientation, the EEOC versus Harris Funeral Home, which is about gender identity. I couldn't get people to even agree to listen to the facts of what the laws were and what was coming before the United States Supreme Court. So that's what the world we live in.
I certainly think that the potential for a tolerance ordinance moving forward is definitely possible. I think that the last time there was a close, we got close to a consensus, the council and those who were promoting the ordinance. I have made a pillar of my administration equity and inclusion, and that's not exceptional. It's equity and inclusion for everyone.
You know, for some reason on this question, we got off on education, and people don't need to look any further than me. What my record is in the House of Representatives in education reform, but the question is tolerance. I definitely support a tolerance resolution. The reason it is not passed, in my opinion, is we don't have good communication between the mayor and the council members. The council members need to be kept abreast with the mayor on what their priorities are. This should be a priority. Need to discuss it and figure out ahead of time. I know that's what we did when we were in the legislature, as Denise knows and also Sharon knows. When you have a bill, you sit down as a group and you compromise and you make things happen and you get a vote where they pass. I don't think this is happening right now on the council. They don't have enough communication. So if this is a top priority, we sit down, we work together, we find a way to solve this problem and pass this resolution. Thank you.
As a general proposition, I think that freedom and individual liberty are important for all people. But they're right. Until we bring the parish together in many other ways, we'll never accomplish bringing all people together, regardless of where they come from. Education, my Funded Don't Run It program is important. To bring the new city police force together, combine the city police and the sheriffs into one new elite crime-fighting force called the Guardian Rouge, and then do things that will bring the parish together. And I like to call them lifestyle or quality of life issues. For instance, the biggest one that I want to push is getting rid of City Park Golf Course and quit appeasing 17 golfers, and let's make a true central park like they have in New York City. That way we can bring all people together in a fantastic atmosphere where we can come together as one people and enhance and push that whole fitness regimen and get everybody. It's an obese parish, folks, so let's get everybody working together and being as one.
I believe Lester Dewey from WAFB has a question. Lester. And we will start with Jordan.
Thank you, Jim. So you all have talked about the crime rate in Baton Rouge probably more than any other topic. We did surpass last year's homicide rate, I believe, this weekend. A lot of folks, including the district attorney, have said that the domestic violence homicides are up, plus they've talked about coronavirus. But we've already heard talked about from you guys about how the BRPD needs more officers, talking about how the department needs more support. But what is your actual plan or experience in reducing crime here in Baton Rouge? And do you believe that should include possibly a change in leadership at the top of BRPD?
Thank you, Lester. I think it's important to note that on the last, crime has been a problem in East Baton Rouge Parish for a while, and in the last campaign, Mayor Broom did promise to her supporters that she would get a new chief of police, and what she did. Unfortunately, our chief of police has not been very effective, but I don't place all blame on him because the policies are broken. They're underfunded. the current administration has found $6 to $12 million in inefficiencies in the department. So we know that that can go to give our police raises. Why is that important? Because you recruit better quality candidates when you pay them more. It's common sense that you understand when you have to do business. However, our chief doesn't even live in our parish. So what's it say to people, how can we instill faith in our chief when he lives outside the parish? He's one of the top paid officials in the department, and they don't live inside the city limits or the parish of East Baton Rouge. That's a problem. So what I recommend is that we don't reinvent the wheel, because we're not the only city that has crime problems. We looked at the people like Birmingham, Alabama, or Richmond, Virginia, that have similar population sizes, more police officers, and effectively less crime rates. There's a way to do it, but we must attack it, and the department must know that they have the support of the mayor-president, which is evident they don't have now. So we must back our police, and we cannot afford to defund our police in any manner.
We've had over 400 people die in our parish since 2017 after coming off a year of a record decade-low homicide. We have real problems in leadership at BRPD. I think the BRPD chief is following the mayor's lead in what they're trying to do in the community. What I would do that would be vastly different is I would take one of my assistant chief administrative officers and make that person over public safety as a liaison to the fire departments, EMS, and the sheriff, but primarily over BRPD, so that we can have great communication. Because if there isn't great communication, that could be a problem. If there is great communication currently, then more blame could be put on the mayor for how bad our crime is. I would go to the community, tell those folks what they know already, the prevalence of crime in their neighborhood, what best practices are around the country to eradicate and lower that crime rate, and get buy-in from the community. Go right to the folks that are being hurt the most and victimized the most by the crime rate, and get their buy-in on making real positive change.
I just read about 3 articles, one from the Wall Street Journal, one from the Washington Post, and one from the New York Times. And all of the articles talked about how this global pandemic has been a catalyst for an uptick of crime throughout the country. What have we done since I've been in office? We've infused our Baton Rouge Police Department with over $27 million of enhancements. We brought new cars for them. We've funded body cameras. And in my 2021 budget, due to efficiencies of $7 million that we've identified throughout city parish government, we will be able to elevate the salary of our first responders. Police, fire, EMS is the goal. Now, what I would like all of you all here to do is to make sure there are no obstructions when I put that raise in the budget.
We can beat crime to death. Crime is obviously a serious problem in this community. One of the things we need to do is to make sure that this community is safe, secure, and every person in the East Baton Rouge Parish is respected. To do that, we need to continue to educate people. We need to give people opportunities. Opportunities equal less crime. People need to make sure that we can get them jobs. We need to make sure we do not abandon the police. The police are good people trying to do the right job. The problem is they're understaffed. We need to have more police. We don't have nearly enough police that we need, and also we must try to find a way to increase their pay. We need to educate the police on the crime situation, on the drug situation, also the mental health situation, and also on race relations. We need to give them the opportunity and the tools to do their job. If we do, I promise you, if we also implement BRAVE, crime will be reduced.
I think that we must, first of all, pay our police a fair wage. And you cannot give people pennies on the dollars and expect to get the best of the best or the brightest of the brightest. But we have to go further than that. We have to lift our communities up out of poverty, because that is the systemic causes of crime is poverty. And so when we are able to do that, I believe that we will see a change in our city. But not only that, when there are issues that come up that we face, like the Plank Road party that went on for 2 months or over 2 months, and nobody went out there to stop that party, when residents were calling my phone and blowing it up, and the police were nearby, but they never stopped it. I think that we can no longer do that. I stepped out on Plank Road, that shows leadership, and talked to the individuals and told them that they had to get off of Plank Road. That's not a club. You gotta be bold in your leadership, and I think that's what we're lacking, and you can't have a peace rally after the street has already been cleaned up.
Denise, you're like Brack trying to squeeze me out here. Okay. We do need new leadership, and we need a whole new mindset. That's why I advocate combining the city police and the sheriff into one new entity, one elite crime-fighting force called the Guardian Rouge. Red cars, red uniforms, a whole new mindset. We're going to put substations in the poorest parts of the city. We're going to create community policing on steroids. We want people to live in the parish, so we're going to give them bonuses if they live in the parish, super bonuses if they live in the worst neighborhoods. So there's all kinds of things that can be done, and so it takes a new mindset, and what we need to do is make sure that the policemen are getting out of their cars and getting into the communities, because we need to go away from this adversarial situation that we have in all police forces. And so you do it with a whole new concept, the Guardian Rouge, and people will be proud of that. It's something that we can emulate, that people will emulate from around the country, and that young kids will be proud to say that their parents are a member of the Guardian Rouge.
This will be the final question before we have each candidate ask the other candidate, whoever that drew, a question. But we had mentioned racial reconciliation in our parish, and I'd like to ask each of the candidates, starting with Mr. Watson, what's the biggest impediment we have in our parish toward racial understanding? And is there a person, can you name one person from another race who you regularly consult with about the issues of the day? Matt?
We do have problems of division that are talked about in our meeting, talked about by community organizers. But when I work in 7805 with the community action team up there in 02 and 07, I get along with those folks just fine. When I'm out there working side by side up on cleanup projects, nobody's upset about anybody else. We're laughing, we're having a great time. I think if everybody gets together, spends a little bit more time with somebody that they don't know, I think we can get over this, I don't like this other person, or I feel like this other person doesn't like me, from a judgment made from 15 feet away instead of going up and talking to somebody else. I think we can get on the other side of that. But I'll tell you, I don't think we're as divided in this community as what's said, because I'll tell you, no matter where you go in East Baton Rouge Parish, everyone is dissatisfied with the services that they're getting from government. They're dissatisfied with the crime rate. And that's what unites us all, and those solutions will bring us all back together. I like talking with Jerry Jones Jr. in the North Baton Rouge Economic Development District. He's a very, very bright guy.
While certainly going out to communities of disinvestment is a good way to start a conversation with people of other races, we've got to do a deep dive into the issues of systemic and institutional racism that have plagued our community for years, that keep someone of one color from making as much money as someone of another race, of the disinvestment that exists in various neighborhoods. So it's a little bit more than just having a conversation, but that's a good start. And the truth of the matter is, we in this city really couldn't even have these type of conversations until the advent of the killing of George Floyd. Then everybody wanted to talk about race. Everybody wanted to talk about how do we get beyond that? How do we create an atmosphere of peace and equity for everyone? Because everyone was shocked to the core. I will tell you that I am enormously blessed to have a CAO Daryl Gizzle, who I communicate with on a regular basis about issues surrounding race, discrimination, disinvestment, and we have some very interesting conversations.
I'll start off with the person that I have a lot of respect for, that I talk to quite a bit, and that's College Temple. He's level-headed, he's got his finger on the pulse, and I run a lot of questions, and pretty tough questions by College. But you know, this past Saturday I had an interesting experience. I had an event, a guy came up to me and said, "I'd like to take you around the city." He took me to a gentleman by the name of Mr. Lee. And Mr. Lee has a car wash on the corner, I believe, of Washington and Delta. Unbelievable guy. He also understands the problems. Then I went to Garfield Street and met a gentleman and talked to him. Again, it was a very interesting conversation. Then I went up to Jubin and visited with some people. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying that's what needs to happen. We need to go visit with people, find out how they live, find out what their problems are. They can come to my home, see where I live, and see what my problems are. My problem is, on the back of the property tax, I got all this millage just sitting in there. They don't have a clue what I'm talking about probably. So my point is, I disagree a little bit with the mayor. I really believe that communication, getting to know people, and loving them will really go a long way in solving the problem. Thank you.
Coach James Holmes, I play basketball with him every day, every week. He is the head of discipline and head basketball coach at Baker High School. We have a lot of conversations, and he gives me a really good insight on what's going on in the community. I've also represented 30,000 people since the early 90s as a lawyer, and most of those are black people. So I've had a good immersion and discussions over many years. But it all goes back to education. I mean, it just does. And in my Funded Don't Run It program, where every child gets a credit stipend to spend wherever they want. That way the government is not running the schools, it's just funding the schools. It would create an educational, entrepreneurial windstorm that you've never seen. And it would mix the races naturally, because there would be schools we can't even imagine right now. It would be the biggest thing, and the mayor has no direct effect on it, but they have the bully pulpit, and they can create that with a strong mindset that is what's going to change this parish. Fund it, don't run it.
You can go to Fuse the Roots. No. Sorry, I got caught. First of all, I believe that we have a racial divide in our communities because one side of town don't know what the other side of town is actually doing or how they live. And so a part of racial divide and the disparity is because of the disparity in investments on one side of town versus the other side. And that goes to the amount of money you make, the schooling that you get, the education, the mental health, and all of that. What I will say is that I oftentimes speak with, I know y'all gonna say this is my boss, but Attorney Gordon McKernan, because he has not only money, influence, but also he works with both sides. And then I speak with William Daniels quite a bit about the racial divide in this city. And so I believe that we can overcome that by coming together and communicating. And a lot of times we'll find that we have more in common than we do apart. All of us want the same thing. We want great education for our kids. We want health care for our families. And we certainly want a city with much less crime.
You know, not to beat a dead horse, but this is another problem that has existed for a long time. And, you know, someone who I speak to on a daily basis and whom I'm honored to be in business with is my best friend, who's also named Jordan, who's an African-American individual. And I've learned a lot over the last few years, particularly in seeing on the other side of the aisle how life is and how a same situation can impact him differently than it impacts me. So we got to all come to the table, but as he said earlier, It all starts with an opportunity, and education creates opportunity, and development creates opportunity. Until we give the northern part of the parish, where most of the African Americans live, the equal opportunities that we give our southern part of the parish, we cannot expect them to feel like they are at the table with us, and they're not. And it's beneficial to them when Democrats are elected, because what Democrats do is prey off of their inability to make their own decision and hope that they're going to do something for them, and they never effectively done, which is why we've been this way after 20 years of Democratic leadership.
We're ready for the candidates' questions of one other candidate, and we will start with the mayor, and then in the last round, the final statements, we'll start with Matt and move down the line. But Mayor, I don't know who you have, but please come forward and we'll find out.
I have Councilman Watson. Councilman Watson, I took the initiative because there was so much concern around reopening bars as part of our economic recovery over a week or so ago, and reached out to the parties responsible for that, sent them a letter, initiated, put the plan in process to reopening. Then all of a sudden, the council comes up with what turned out to be somewhat of a debacle for our community. I believe that you want the best for our economic recovery, but could you explain why so much chaos around that particular issue?
The meeting that the mayor's talking about was this past Wednesday. We could only muster to get 7 council members to bother to come in, and even on a Zoom meeting to do their job. We had vast majority of the Republican members. We had Erica Green, the sole Democratic member of council, show up. She voted to abstain to open the bars. So we had 7 members, which is what it takes to have a quorum. 7 members is also votes in the affirmative, is what it takes to pass any resolution or any ordinance. So we had the vote. Erica Green, Councilwoman Erica Green of District 5, chose to abstain from the vote. That gave us only 6 votes left. And then, without any of the other members of council there, we couldn't lean on anybody else. And then when Councilman Trey Welch asked Ms. Cranford how many bars are going to be put out of business and remain out of business, how many people are going to lose their jobs, how many people are going to stay out of work, how much trouble we're going to have with PPP and giving people money towards payroll. That's when Councilwoman Erica Green fled from the meeting, got off the meeting, we lost quorum, and that was the end of the meeting.
Steve Clark, you asked a question.
This is a question for E. Eric, my good friend E. Eric. Can you share with me your workout
Well, I'm not going to play him in tennis because I may be a little younger, but he knows how to play the game, and I'm just not that good. Look, I appreciate the question because I think it's a huge thing. We have 60% obesity in this parish, and it affects the health system. It affects COVID responses. It's everything. I work out every day. I run. I play basketball once a week, like I referenced. I do a lot of body weight exercise, and I think everyone here should look at their diet, look at their health plan. And we should try to get, if I become mayor, I'm so honored to get that post, then what I want to do is create a whole series of fitness gurus. We're going to have one head, and it's going to be volunteers, so no cost to the city. But then to go out and intersperse themselves amongst the parish and try to get people walking, just doing anything as a neighborhood, as neighbors, and that way we can all come together in fitness. And I have a fitness challenge. Again, if any of these people want to do a fitness challenge, winner take all, winner takes mayor, I'm good for it. Or one-on-one, loser drops out. I haven't had any takers yet. Thank you. Oh, I have the question. Okay, this question goes to Jordan Piazza. First, since he and I are the two non-politicians, outsiders who were being dissed by Barack, I want him to comment on that real quick. And also, I want to see what he thinks about my wonderful, innovative idea of changing City Park Golf Course into a central park for all of the citizens to share.
Thanks, E. And it is a tragedy about Barack. We'll talk about that in closing. Yeah, I do think that there's a better use for City Park. There's no doubt about it. I live near there, grew up near there, frequent that area, but I can honestly say I've never played around golf there. And I don't know many people that do. I know a lot of friends that play golf and they never say City Park. And so I think there's a better use. I think we have some challenges with rec, obviously, to get them on the same page. Obviously, there used to be a pool there that got filled in. So I think that is a great common space that could be, like when you look at cities like Dallas, Texas, or Birmingham, or these Austin, or these thriving cities that have a lot of younger generations fleeing to after college, you see that they have these areas of town where they can go to, where they don't have to drive all across the parish or the city or the town to involve themselves in different festivities. So I do think there's a much better use of that space, and I think the mayor, president, as well as the council should lead the charge with Brett on how we can better use that site and also tie it into the lakes as they do the lake project. So.
Thank you. I have a question for Mayor Broom. Mayor Broom, are you aware that I proposed the body camera ordinance in October of 2015 when you were in the Senate? And are you also aware that I chaired the first body camera committee? And so if you are aware of those things, can you please tell me why you would send out a mailer that says you required every police officer to have a body camera? Because if that's the case, you should have said that you require every police to have a gun, because they have to have that too. I think you need to make clarification to the people that you're sending your mailers to that you did not require it. When you came there, it was already passed. All you had to do was put it in the budget.
Representative Marcel, I have said time and time again, I have acknowledged the work that you did while you were on the council with the body cameras. But what you did, you had the ball. I served as the quarterback. I took it over the line. If there were not funding for the body cameras, if I had not taken the initiative, demonstrated the courage that you often talk about, or the leadership, it could have just been a discussion that was going on and on and on. But I took the initiative. I took the leap. I communicated with the council members. I told them about the necessity of having these body cameras and why I was putting it in the budget. So I give you your props for starting that process. I finished the process with the help of this council.
My question is for Steve. Steve, obviously, I've known you quite a while, but let's be honest here. 78 years old, if you were to be elected, you'd be 82 after your first term, which, right now many people think President Trump is too old to be running for president, and Joe Biden. And then my question is earlier you said, you chaired the education while you were in the Senate, which we all know Louisiana education is not something that is nationally acclaimed. We don't have great education. But you believe it's one of your tributes as to why you did get mayor president. You also told people like myself that you weren't going to run, and at the last minute got in. And my question to you is, what leadership do you think you believe, given your history and your record and your age, just being honest, that you can bring to the city parish?
Jordan, Ronald Reagan was fairly old too, and I think he did a hell of a job. And I think I'll do a great job. What I bring to the table is I'm going to hire Eric to be my fitness expert. So I'm going to be in peak condition training to kill by the time I'm mayor. But anyway, I was in the military for 5 years and I learned a lot of leadership. I was also in the legislature for 12 years. And hopefully you know my record. I was very bold on education. Yes, we're struggling, but I was willing to make change. I did a lot of things that I'm very proud of to try to improve our educational system, which included choice. I believe that every child has to have an opportunity to be successful in life one way and one way only, and that's to be educated. And I don't care if you're homeschooled, I don't care how you are. And I believe in early childhood. I was very much a proponent for early childhood. So I think my record speaks for itself. I'm willing to take a chance. I'm willing to be bold. I'm willing to be courageous. And I'm willing to do the job that's necessary to improve the quality of life of everyone in this room, plus everybody in East Baton Rouge Parish.
I guess it's no surprise that I have Representative Marcel as my question. When you left the Metropolitan Council, our Congressman Garrett Graves assisted in getting grant money for those body cameras that you and the mayor just had a discussion about. It was a grant to purchase body cameras, not a reimbursal grant. So when she went ahead to go buy those body cameras, she in fact negated the grant and had to have Garrett Graves go back and fix the situation. So we talk about a lot of crises she's managed us through. Well, this is one that she traded herself. How would you work with the federal government to get more grants for this community?
Councilman Matt Watson, that's a great question. And you're absolutely correct. The funding was already there for those body cameras because we had worked and we had found those funds for the body camera. All she simply had to do was take the grant and apply it. I would continue my work in working with federal government and state leaders, particularly transportation, to help with the infrastructure because I served on that committee as well. I lead by example. I don't wait until something is finished to say I had something to do with it. I put my name on the line in the beginning, whether it's federal funds, state funds, or local funds. And sometimes it's not popular to lead. Sometimes it's easier to take the credit after the work has been done.
Anyway, I've been a person that's always dedicated myself to being on the front line. We talk about going into different parts of the community. I don't just go into 705, 02, and 07. I go into every part of the community that's ever asked me for help because they've not been able to get assistance elsewhere. I communicate with people no matter what their race, their gender, even their sexual orientation. Doesn't make any difference to me. People have problems that government is supposed to solve. Public safety, transportation, drainage, all these things need to be solved. I work with everybody and I'm out there. I've never asked anyone to do anything that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. I've earned the trust of the hardworking men and women who work for this municipality. I've earned the trust of the people that I've served as legislative aide and council person for almost 8 years in District 11, but I've never thought for a second that my service to my community ended at the geographical boundary of my district. I've made it my point to serve people, and other than the birth of my children, serving people in this capacity has been the absolute thrill of my life. Matt Watson, I hope to see you on November 3rd voting for me.
You know, it's an honor to be here, and I hope I'm going to implore the press to take this because, unfortunately, like I said earlier, we don't have enough of the press getting out the facts about everything. And it's important that every fact get out because the voters have a right to know who they're voting for. We don't need someone that wants to get in the ditches and dig ditches. We need a leader. We don't need someone that has lawsuits pending for unpaid debt. We don't need someone who doesn't own a home in this parish running as our mayor president. We don't need someone that wants a job because they need a job. We need somebody that wants to make Baton Rouge better. We need someone that understands that, like Steve said, look at record. It's that simple. Look at the gasoline taxes, people. We don't need more taxes. We need more taxpayers. Look at how the individuals are in this race and their resumes and what they've done and what they do. And I ask you all, what makes them qualified? More qualified than the other. And I think when you look at it, you look at someone, I'm proud of what I have. I had the opportunity to lead Baton Rouge. People want to say I might not have done much, but for my age, what I've done and the time I have is more than most of the people here can say they've done. So I'm excited about that, but we need a change in leadership, and we need a new way of thinking, a new government, and it's time for a new generation of leaders. And I ask that you all take that serious because Baton Rouge's fate is in all your hands.
Let me say that I've shown my leadership on the Metro Council. I've shown my leadership as state representative, where I came in and passed bills for OMV that affected every citizen throughout the state if you had fines. They had been sitting there with no method of payments to make partial payments to get your driver's license back for year in and year out. When I found that out, I tackled it, and guess what? We passed a law. So I get calls from all over the state about my leadership skills. I'm not afraid to lead. I do not take credit for things that I have not done. And you know what? If you're tired of the flooding in Baton Rouge and you're outraged with the crime that some of us say is only in 2 zip codes, I beg to differ. I believe that we deserve change. I believe that I am that change. And if you agree with me, you will vote number 9 and see Denise Marcel on your ballot.
I'm E. Eric Gaylord, and I'm running for mayor. As these guys well know, my website is fusetherouge.org. They know that. And I chose that on purpose because I think we need to fuse this parish together in so many ways. Education, crime, traffic, business development, and quality of life, community relations. We have a myriad of problems, but if we come together with that kind of mentality, that is why I think that we can all make a difference together. I'm a true outsider. I think there's a swamp here. I think there's a way to approach this that can be seen from one of the non-politicians that's running. And I strongly ask you for my support. And I want to leave you with this, just make sure that Jim wants to make sure that I entertain a little bit. I'm E. Eric Gaylord, where I stay, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the USA. I grew up here, and because I care, I want one great city, so I'm running for mayor. We come together, we will not lose. E. Eric Gaylord, Fuse the Rouge.
I gotta follow that. I want to congratulate all the candidates for filing. It's not easy to be a public servant. It takes time consuming, and I want to wish all of y'all the very best of luck. I also want to let everybody know, as you know from what I've said here today, that I'm willing to put my name and my reputation on the line to improve the quality of life of every citizen in East Baton Rouge Parish. I've lived here all of my life. I have 4 grandchildren. I don't want them to leave. I know we have problems. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and solve the problems. I ask for your support. Early voting starts October the 16th. That's quick. So remember to go vote. My website is stevecarterforbr.com. I ask you to go to the website and you'll see all the solutions that I have to the problems. I love Baton Rouge. All I want is an opportunity. And I promise you, we'll move the parish forward because we've been doing the same old thing for the past 15 or 20 years. It's time for a change. Thank you very much for your vote and support.
Thank you all for being here today and for the opportunity. I want to start off first by saying I wholeheartedly support all of the candidates here remaining as part of our forums going forward. Whether it's TV, whatever, I think everyone should be included so the people can hear. So to Mr. Piazza and to Mr. Girard, I hope to see you on the campaign trail moving forward. And as the mayor-president, I've had the opportunity for the past 4 years to demonstrate transformative leadership, community policing, transformative leadership moving the largest infrastructure project in the history of Baton Rouge, transformative leadership, Howell Place reinvestment in a disinvested community, transformative leadership, healthcare in North Baton Rouge and in other areas. I stand here 4 years later to say that we have sown some great seeds for moving forward, not just for your children, Steve, but for children in the future, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. 20 years forward, they will look back and thank this administration for the seeds that we have sown, that they will benefit in a great harvest. Thank you so much. God bless you. Please re-elect me on November